If Trump attempts to weaponize the justice system against his political opponents with Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff as our shadow attorney general.
This seems rather nefarious, doesn't it? There's a Democrat congressman out of North Carolina. His name's Wiley Nickel. I wish I could make that up. His name is Wiley Nickel. He's a Democrat from North Carolina. And he took to the House floor yesterday with visual aids and everything to lay out the Democrats' shadow cabinet to undermine the Trump administration.
If Trump attempts to weaponize the justice system against his political opponents with Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff as our shadow attorney general, arguing against replacing our independent prosecutors with Trump loyalists. If Trump seeks to eliminate the Department of Education, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, a former Teacher of the Year, could step up as shadow education secretary to loudly defend public education in the United States. If Trump orders Marco Rubio to hand Ukraine and much of Eastern Europe to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Congressman Greg Meeks, as Shadow Secretary of State, could be a strong voice in support of maintaining international relationships and protecting democracy at home and abroad. Senator Michael Bennet as Shadow Treasury Secretary, and Congresswoman Susan DelBene as Shadow Commerce Secretary could help ensure the middle class and small businesses have a voice in government and call out Trump's proposed tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. As Shadow Defense Secretary, Congressman Adam Smith, a great representative for the people of Washington and not a Fox News host, could counter Trump's threat to use military force against his political opponents and work to ensure that the Department of Defense stays loyal to the Constitution and not some wannabe dictator. And Senator Tammy Duckworth could argue against cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs that would delay the benefits and care our service members have so rightly earned. If Trump hands over the EPA to big oil ally Lee Zeldin, we could see Congresswoman Kathy Castor pushing back for environmental protection and conservation to protect the air we breathe and the water we drink. And if Trump pushes to ban abortion nationwide, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro could step in as Shadow Secretary of Health and Human Services to defend women's right to choose and argue against the gutting of Medicare by Trump and his cronies. Mr. Speaker, new times require new solutions. The shadow cabinet isn't just about opposing extreme MAGA attacks on our government. It's also about making clear what we stand for, not just what we're against.
Well, you've done both, haven't you? You've told us what you're against, which would be, the will of the American people, our voices, our Constitution, and the democratic process in selecting our government that we just executed 10 days ago, because you're openly undermining them with your shadow cabinet. But you're also, yes, absolutely telling us what you're for, which is a blatant, un-American, unconstitutional maneuver to try to circumvent due process and the rule of law. So I appreciate that, I guess. Thanks for being open and honest about it, even with your really cool poster that you had made, probably on taxpayers' dime. This seems rather nefarious, doesn't it? I mean, what's going on behind the scenes here? Is it the hidden hand of Nancy Pelosi doing an Emperor Palpatine move here? Oh, yes, we're going to have to get a new leader of the Senate here. I'll take care of that for you. Meanwhile, he's really a Sith Lord trying to take over the galaxy. This is how democracy dies, in a round of applause. Although it really should just be mocked. The idea of a shadow cabinet is not actually a new idea in Western governments. It's new to America, certainly, but in British Parliament, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, usually the losing opposition party ends up with their own shadow cabinet, they call it, or opposition cabinet. They call themselves Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, and they sort of present people who would be the counterpoint to the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Interior and all the ministers that they have over there. But it's not something that we've ever done here in America. It's wrong. It's stupid. It's childish. It's infantile. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. But there is one good thing that comes out of this. Not only do they show their hand and display for the entire world how petty and un-American they are, but it also shows how incredibly thin their bench is. Did you hear the palpable giants this person named as their potential secretaries of this and that. They're a joke. Trump's over here in Mar-a-Lago putting together the Avengers. And what do they have? Adam Schiff as Attorney General? Seriously? It's pathetic. They got no one over there. There's also something else at play here. While they're undermining the rule of law, undermining the voice of the people, and undermining our constitutional process through democratic means to select our leaders, while they're doing that with this joke, they're actually doing very nefarious things right now out in the open, defying our rule of law in the state of Pennsylvania. Perhaps you've seen this. The Decision Desk HQ, which we use here at Town Hall to make our decisions, we've called Pennsylvania for Dave McCormick. So has the AP. So has every major media outlet. As you can see, they're still counting ballots, and Dave McCormick has a razor-thin lead by about 35 or 40,000 votes. However, Mark Elias, that dastardly election law attorney the Democrats always employ when they want to do something nefarious with ballot counting, he's been put on the ground in Pennsylvania to help find enough ballots to give Bob Casey a lead. This is exactly what they've been doing for the last several election cycles, and we saw it come to fruition right out in the open in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Now, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, until very recently, has been a blue county. The great work of Scott Pressler and others from the RNC who have been trying to swing Pennsylvania back over into the Republican column, they focused on a couple of these counties, Bucks in particular. And by election day, there were actually a majority Republicans registered in Bucks County for the first time in many, many election cycles. But the people who sit on the commission to make decisions about the election still dominated by Democrats. Well, they're counting the ballots in Bucks County, and they faced the reality that many of the mail-in ballots and absentee ballots had been submitted without signatures. Now, I don't want to split hairs here or get too pedantic, but in the state of Pennsylvania, there is a law pertaining to absentee and mail-in ballots that are submitted without signatures. And the law, forgive me for being, such a stickler, but the law says that if there is no signature on the ballot, they are to be discounted. They are to be disregarded. They are not valid. They are not to be counted for obvious reasons. That's the law in Pennsylvania. So for some reason, this commission is stuck in a quandary. We have all these ballots and there's no signatures. What should we do about it? Now, I know you would think the answer is, what do you mean, what do we do about it? We throw them in the trash. They're useless. They're not valid. Anybody could have submitted these. We don't know. There's no signature. There's no accountability. And the law says we don't count them. But they had to have a big debate about it, and they had a vote. There was a motion made that they should disregard all of the ballots. And then look what happened when it came time to second that motion.
We reject all three categories of these ballots.
Your motion is to reject or dismiss the challenges in this category in front of you?
Correct, yep.
Not going to second that, mostly because I think we all know that precedent by a court doesn't matter anymore in this country, and people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention to it.
Well, that charming young lady is County Commissioner Diane Ellis Marseglia. Yeah, that's right. She has a hyphen. She is, go ahead, guess what political party she belongs to. Go ahead and guess. That is correct. She is a Democrat. She cast her vote yesterday to count those provisional ballots that, of course, not only by the law, but also by a subsequent court order reinforcing the law that says, no, you are not to count those ballots. And you heard her right. She said people violate laws anytime they want. For me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention. She went on to say there's nothing more important than counting votes. And I would argue she is correct. There is nothing more important than counting votes. The problem is that's not a vote, not by the legal definition in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is a inappropriately marked ballot, which is different than a vote. You don't count every ballot. You count every legal vote. That's how our system works. That's how our system has always worked. The problem is in Pennsylvania, they've sort of gotten into the habit of doing this. In fact, back in 2020, this is exactly what they did. The difference back then was the Republicans didn't get that court order ahead of time. They tried to get it after the fact, after Joe Biden had already been declared the winner. We did it, Joe. Yeah, they did it when, because of the pandemic, they changed a lot of the basic standards that we put in place for decades to protect against exactly this sort of thing. In fact, I was so plugged in on what was going on in Nevada, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and in Georgia back in 2020 that I was really, really looking forward to the open debate that was going to be had in Congress discussing exactly how Pennsylvania in particular had circumvented their state legislature and utilized an unelected Secretary of State to change the laws for their election to accommodate the pandemic that year. In my opinion, that actually invalidated the electoral votes from that state because the Constitution of the United States specifically says that they shall follow what the legislature said. And Pennsylvania did not follow what the legislature said. They followed what the unelected Secretary of State and what a court said. I was so looking forward to Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz taking up that discussion and arguing that point on live television the afternoon of January 6th. But that debate never happened. That debate never happened because of the events of January 6th that preempted any open and public discussion in Congress about the Electoral College and states that were being objected to. So it never happened. But, like I said, Pennsylvania's been in the groove, baby, and it's a hard habit to break. So I'm glad that they're now openly doing exactly what they did 4 years ago, this time for the Senate race, because they just can't accept the fact that they don't get whatever they want. And if it's close enough, well, they'll do stuff like this. Let's watch her again.
We reject all three categories of these ballots.
Your motion is to reject or dismiss the challenges in this category in
Right.
front of you?
Correct, yep.
Not going to second that, mostly because I think we all know that precedent by a court doesn't matter anymore in this country, and people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention to it.
I hope she's famous by now. Once again, Dianne Ellis Marseglia, Democrat, Bucks County Commissioner. Heck, she'll probably be the new head of free and fair elections in the Democrats' national shadow cabinet that they're setting up. Why is all this important? Why? Because in the next 2 months, stuff like this is going to happen at the state level, trying to steal the election for Bob Casey away from Dave McCormick, who should rightly be the next senator from Pennsylvania. They're going to try shenanigans as Trump tries to put his cabinet together, and they're going to throw slime at every single one of his appointees. And they're going to try to pack the courts in the final 2 months of Joe Biden's administration. We had a perfect example of that last month as one of the judges Joe Biden's trying to cram through in the last minute faced the Judiciary Committee. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana posted this video yesterday to raise the warning flag that Chuck Schumer is going to try to cram these judicial nominees through. Take a look at the kind of judge that the Democrats are trying to push through. The same kind of judge who, if placed at the bench, will be able to make decisions about whether ballots are counted or not in the next election.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Casaby. I'm looking at an order you issued as a magistrate judge here, requiring the use of pronouns in your court. Do you require the use of pronouns, the declaration of one's pronouns in your court?
Senator, that may be referring to perhaps a trial management order or a scheduling order of some kind?
Yeah. No, it's a statement. You issued it. Here it is.
Oh, it's an invitation for people to identify their pronouns and or their honorifics.
Well, I'm looking at your requirement that you issued to all people in your court. You say, quote, when you introduce yourself in a meeting, you should say, my name is Judge Blank and my pronouns are blank. Is
And
that right?
Senator, those were not requirements or rules. Those were suggestions and
That was
and
suggestion.
those were suggestions and invitations for people
Okay.
to use.
And you also, in your directive, you say, quote, I'd like counsel to introduce themselves, giving your full name and your honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr., not Mrs. And if your client will be making an appearance, I ask you to please introduce them to the court by giving me their full name and their honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr.
I don't know if you caught this, but when he starts to go through the honorifics, the Ms. and Mix or Mr., keep an eye on Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas sitting next to him. Also a lawyer, also I believe Army, I think he was a Ranger actually in the United States Army during the Iraq War. Watch Cotton as Kennedy pushes through here.
Quote, I'd like counsel to introduce themselves, giving your full name and your honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr., not Mrs. And if your client will be making an appearance, I ask you to please introduce them to the court by giving me their full name and their honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr.
You know, you gotta love Cotton. Cotton has got the driest personality. And like I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen the guy smile or laugh before. I love that Kennedy. Imagine having to sit next to Kennedy at all during these hearings, but then having Kennedy go through the various bizarre pronouns. I emceed a Republican Party fundraiser once several years ago, and Cotton was the keynote speaker. So we sat next to each other at the head table there, and I was hilarious. I was just killing it. I was making joke after joke. Nothing from the guy. Absolutely nothing. I did clearly I have to try a different strategy next time. I got to bring out the pronouns like Kennedy. But that's an example of what they're doing right now. That's what they're doing in the final weeks of the Biden administration. Joe doesn't know what the hell's going on, but Schumer and Pelosi and whoever's still calling the shots at the White House are going to try to cram through not just judges, but also executive orders and try to handcuff the incoming Trump administration. And at the same time, they're openly talking about defying election laws in Pennsylvania to try to deny a victory to Dave McCormick there. And they're openly talking about putting together their shadow cabinet. Oh, and the reason they're doing it all is because Donald Trump violates all the norms, everybody. We've got to get back to the norms so the adults can be in charge. You just saw what the adults do when they're in charge. Now we can get to work, finally get done with some of the major issues the country is facing. And one of the most significant, of course, is our national debt. But the fact is, the nation is broke. You know it. We all know it. And the debt is a house of cards. It can't quickly be dismantled. The strategy still remains the same for us in our personal lives. You got to diversify your savings. Many things are out of our control. You could argue even out of the president's control. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you do that. They can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news about all of this is it doesn't cost you 1 penny out of pocket. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold. And we got a special offer right now through Black Friday. You'll receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased at Birch Gold. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today.